that. And let's do this. Okay. Can you guys see my browser here?
Yes.
Excellent. So let's begin. Where do you guys want to start here? I've got Theoria up, and I have a little whiteboard here up. So what should we go into first here? All right, nothing. We're done. Great. I'll see you guys next time.
Um, I don't know if there was like something specific that you wanted to go over today, but I really I was doing really well with the first unit of work, and then this one has just like thrown me completely for a curveball. I feel like
Yeah,
um,
this
just
one,
because it's like
well,
it's really hard to hear like syncopation,
yes, yes, it is.
and it's really
Okay.
hard to hear rest, especially with the metronome beats. Like sometimes
I
I miss the metronome for the
Yeah.
notes. I don't know if that happens for other
Why
people.
don't I start off giving a description of what I think the difficulty here is, and you guys can tell me if I'm right or if I am not seeing what you guys are actually having difficulty with, okay? So the first difficulty here comes on from my part and the way I do the video lectures. So the video lectures will give you one concept at a time, and the exercise that I was giving you from Theoria, the ear training exercises, really demands that you have all of that together. It would be much better if we had one of these tutorials to do it. Actually, there is one tutorial over here, rhythmic reading. I tried this myself. It is terrible, and it's really bad, and I can show you why if you want to see. But basically, let's see. So I have to click. Okay, now I'm assuming that you guys will trust me to say I clicked that correctly and I got everything wrong. So this exercise, it's A, really bad, and B, it's pretty much exactly the same as the one that I was assigning. This one's just a little bit easier. But it does demand you be able to do everything at once, and that's difficult. And the other problem is with the videos that I made, I was discussing rhythm very abstractly, just sort of talking about the math, and there wasn't a whole lot of musical examples. And the musical examples really are what make it more clear. And I was hoping to have this assignment be the thing that makes it more clear, that this would be the musical example. And so I I understand that that was more difficult than the last unit, and yeah, so I apologize for that. Most people did pretty well. I think if I don't remember exactly what your guys' scores were on it, you guys did pretty well too. And like I had said before, these assignments are heavily curved. And given the emails I've been getting about this unit, the test that I'm going to give will also be curved in the same way. So yeah, I understand that it's difficult. Does that sort of capture what you guys have been seeing on your end?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely can see the difficulty being all of it happening at once, and you get one measure to kind of figure it all out. So
Yeah, and I mean, I definitely could have done more in those videos to make the musical examples more salient. I didn't really have any. My video was really just a theory. So this isn't just the fault of Theoria. I'm partially to blame here, so I apologize for that. So, with that, why don't we go into some specifics here? Do you want to talk about these things on a theoretical level? Do you want to just jump in and try some exercises? Uh, Maybe it would be best for me to kind of draw something out here to illustrate a few points. Okay, why don't we start there? Is that okay with you guys?
yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so let's start in the lovely time signature of 4, 4. Okay, so I will, when I teach this class in person, I frequently give students a chart that they can work with. And I'm going to draw that over here. Is there a thing for shapes? Yes, there is a thing for shapes. Okay, so how many ticks do I want? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and let's just go down like that. Okay, so this is our box, and we are going to divide this box up to make things a little bit more visual for people. So if I take this entire row here, we can say that this is a whole note. Okay, so this is our whole note. Okay, and then I can take this box and I can cut it in half. Well, let's do it this way. Is this box even? It's not an even box. Okay, so let's try that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Are we still not dealing with an even box here? No, this is good. Okay. And let's give me some extra space. Okay, okay. Sorry about that. So we could say that that's our whole note. It's the whole row. Okay, now I imagine this part wasn't giving you guys much trouble, but this box will help us out later. And then we can say, okay, well, we cut that in half. We have a half note. We can cut that in fourths. And we have quarter notes. And we can cut those in half. And now we have eighth notes. Etc., etc. We're just, all of the rhythmic values that we have are just cutting the previous one in half, okay? So that's easy enough. Then there's where we come into the syncopations. So let's talk about the dotted notes. So let's say I have a dotted quarter note. Can someone tell me what that means?
That's a quarter plus a little bit extra, like a half of another quarter. I'm right.
Exactly. So it is 1.5 quarter notes. The dot is basically saying and a half of whatever the dot is on. So a dotted quarter note, yeah, that's looking good. A dotted quarter note is equal to the quarter note and half of a quarter note. So we've got that. So if I were to draw that on our chart here, a dotted quarter note, let's leave a space, would be 3/8 notes. So 1.5 quarter notes. Okay? And where it becomes difficult to hear this because of the way it ends up falling on the metronome. Okay, we're going to get there in a second. And the other tricky one, I believe Trey, you were asking me about this in an email, are the triplets. Okay, so if I have a triplet, let's say I have 1, 2, 3, and let's do that, and let's do that. Okay, if I were to put all of these together, what would that equal?
Half note and a dot.
No, a half note and a dot would be basically from the beginning here all the way to here. It's actually a quarter note. Okay, so a triplet eighth note is fitting 3/8 notes in the space where 2 usually would be. Okay, and why this is tricky is everything over here is dividing by 2. And we are suddenly going to divide by 3. So I'm going to put it there. I'm going to put it there. These are not going to be perfect. And I'm going to put it there. Okay, so we have fit 3 things in this same space. But we don't have a rhythmic figure like this little thing with the flag or this quarter note or this whole note. We don't have a symbol for 3. Dividing by 3. So that's where the triplet comes in. You have to mark that. So in the space of a quarter note, that didn't work. In the space of a quarter note, we're going to be fitting 3 triplets. So if our beat is something like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, you have to imagine it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Counting and clapping at the same time is difficult for me. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Do you hear I'm clapping 3 times in each one of those?
Yeah, sounds right.
Okay, so that's what a triplet is. You're fitting 3 in the space where 2 usually would be. 2 of whatever the triplet is. Does that make sense?
So whatever the actual note indicator would be, that's the whole, like that's the time period it's taking up, and then you just use 3 of whatever that note would be in that space.
You were very close. So if I write, let's make it quarter notes. So if I write a triplet quarter note, the total duration of this
Is 1 quarter note.
is a half note.
A half note? Okay.
Yes, we are fitting 3 quarter notes in the space where 2 quarter notes usually would be.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, this a quarter note triplet, a complete quarter note triplet, has the same total duration as a half note.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so like, what is a half note triplet? A complete half note triplet has the same duration as what?
A whole note.
Exactly, and the tricky thing here is that this is really going to throw off your sense of the metronome. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
in keeping with our box here, let's say we have a measure of 4/4. That means I'm going to give myself some good space here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let me draw something. Let's do that. This is not going to line up perfectly, unfortunately. Okay, so we're kind of going out of order here. We're starting with triplets. I'll come back with syncopation. Okay, so is this actually going to work out? No. We gotta make that a quarter note. Okay, so what I would do if I were wanting to show this to someone visually is we could take each one of these and fill in the box as we go. Okay, so we're in a time signature of 4/4. So there are 4 quarter notes per measure. Okay, so each one of these boxes is a quarter note. Okay, and what we'll do is we'll just fill them in one at a time as they come. We have an 1/8 note, so that's half. We have another 1/8 note. Let's leave a little space so you can actually see it. 1/8 note, and then we come to a triplet. The difficulty here is dividing this into thirds. As you can see, because we are in a world where everything is sort of dividing by 2, dividing by 3 becomes tricky. It's hard to draw that perfectly correctly. But we can kind of cheat here and just say, well, I know that this quarter note triplet is the same as what?
A half note.
Half note. So I can just come in here and say, okay, well, this is a half note. And then we have a quarter note here. And that just fills in the rest. Okay? Now, the real difficulty, so something like this is relatively easy. Let's actually just, yeah, nice. Okay.
I'm sorry, can you explain again why a quarter note triplet is 2 notes. I kind of got lost on that.
Yeah. So any sort of triplet, be it a quarter note triplet, be it an eighth note triplet, it could be a whole note triplet if you really hate the people who are going to play your music. If you are, the triplet is basically just saying you are fitting 2 of something in a space where, sorry, you are fitting 3 of something in a space where 2 usually would go. So a quarter note triplet, you are fitting 3 quarter notes into a space where 2 quarter notes usually would go. So what that means is in a space where 2 quarter notes usually would go, that's a half note, okay? And we are fitting 3 quarter notes into a half note. Does that make sense?
So each of those quarter notes in the quarter note triplet is just going to be a little bit shorter than what they would normally be.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. Now, another way to think about this is that the quarter notes in a quarter note triplet aren't quarter notes. Okay? It's
Mhm.
just an abstract symbol. So, I mean, this is our quarter note. If we can't fit 3 of these into the space of a half note, it just can't be done. There's not, the math just doesn't work. But we don't have a symbol for saying a third of something. We only have halves of something. And there's no number of halves that will end up equaling the triplet that we want unless you go down really, really, really small to like 64th notes. And that's really difficult to read. Now, the thing is, it's easy enough for us to divide things by 3. So I was saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's easy for me to just kind of do that. I mean, counting and clapping at the same time is a little tricky, but you get the point. It's easy enough for me to just divide it by 3 in my head. So we just take this little shorthand, rather than going down to a really small value so I can actually perfectly represent thirds of something. We're just going to use the next smallest symbol, that. Well, not specifically that. That's pretty horrendous. But we're just going to use this, and we'll say, okay, it's triplet. Okay, that's what it's getting at there. Does that make sense?
I think I'm following.
Okay, let's move. We're going to go to syncopations now, and then we're going to come back to the triplet, because the syncopation will help us understand the next part of the triplet. Okay? So let's say our pattern is this. Let me think of a good pattern here. Note. Dotted quarter note.
Hey Trey, do you mind muting your microphone, please? I'm sorry. Thank you.
So if we have this pattern here, quarter note, dotted quarter, dotted quarter. So first, add all of this up. Is this a complete measure of 4/4?
It should be.
Yes, it is. Good job. We have a quarter note. We can ignore the dots for a second and just say we have another quarter note, another quarter note. We're missing 1 quarter note. Each of these has a dot, and that dot's worth an eighth note, half of the value that it's attached to. So yes, we have 4 quarter notes. But as far as filling in these boxes, they don't fall evenly on these lines. Okay, so the first one does. Starts at the beginning, goes to the end here. The second one is 1.5. So we can fill in to there. And then the third one is also 1.5. So that's syncopation, when they stop falling on the actual lines. See, so it's our beat, or our figure is actually falling in the middle of a beat here. Okay, that's what I mean by syncopation. Is that clear?
In its actual application, is it usually that the note will end on the and of a beat?
Yeah, that's well, it'll begin on the and of a beat.
Okay.
You know, you'll see this in isolated incidents like what I've drawn here, where it'll just be like in one measure you have something falling on the and of a beat. But oftentimes, like in the music of Brahms, for example, he will do this for an extended period of time, and that's called a hemiola. And what it does is, you don't need to know this, but it's just fun information. It's called a hemiola, and it basically does it makes it sound like a different time signature. Okay, so if I have like a number of these dotted quarter notes in a row, it'll start to sound like a totally different time signature. Okay, but that's not relevant for what we are really worried about today. I just like to give extra information because it's neat. Okay, so yeah, it's the beat will, or the rhythmic value will start on the and of a beat. That's another way to say it. Okay. So if we are going to hear this, I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, but that makes it particularly difficult. And when you hear that metronome, okay, it's hard to hear exactly where it's falling in there. So what I do when I'm listening to it is subdivide the beat. So I'll say in my head, rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, I'll say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So I'm counting 2 on every single one. So if I were to do that for this particular one, I would say 1 and 2, sorry, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, something like that. Okay, I'm not great at clapping and doing it, but that was right. Okay, so by saying the and out loud, I can actually more easily do this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, is it clear why I'm doing this?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so if I want to clap and do this at the same time, I can say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, that's what's happening here. Now the trick is when you sort of combine these two. That is syncopation and triplets. So let's say my new rhythmic figure does this. So for that, and then I do. Sorry, I'm having to do some math here. 1, 2, 3. Let's just finish it off with a nice quarter note. Okay, so that one looks great. Okay, so can someone do the math for me? Does this equal a total measure of 4/4?
I think you might be an eighth note short. I'm not sure though. I could be doing it wrong.
Let's do the math together. Okay, so we have an eighth note here. We have eighth note triplets. So what's another way to say eighth note triplets? What does this equal?
Quarter note.
Quarter note. We're fitting 3 triplets, or 3 eighth notes, in the space where 2 usually would be. And 2 eighth notes usually make up a quarter note. Okay? And then we have a dotted quarter note, which we can write.
Oh, it's dotted? I thought that was okay. I didn't know you meant to click that. My bad.
A little flex. This whiteboard, it's lovely. So we have a quarter plus an eighth. You could also write that as 3/8, however you like to do your math. And then we have another quarter. Oh, that's neat. I can zoom out. I can't scroll down though. Anyway, yeah. So let's say so we have 1/8 note, 2 3/8 notes, 4 5 6 7 8 eighth notes. 8 eighth notes is equal to 4 quarter notes. That's our time signature. Yes, this is a complete measure. Okay. So now let's actually draw our boxes. So we start off with an eighth note. So what am I going to do here?
Half of one of your boxes.
Half of a box, space at the end. Okay, now I have eighth note triplets. So what's next?
Fill up to the half of the next box.
Exactly, because it's a quarter note. I don't think these are exactly half, but we're good enough. Then I have a dotted quarter note. So where does that go to?
It's going to go until the fourth beat.
Yes. We're going to fill up. This is our dot, and then this is the quarter note, and then the last one is just a quarter note. Okay? So this is pretty tricky to hear. So let's put our 1 and 2 and 3 and, whoops, that's in the wrong spot, and 4 and. Okay, so if I just clap the boxes as they show, not necessarily this, it would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And then if I add this triplet, it's going to be 1 and 2, oops, sorry, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. It's very tricky to do that. Let me try it one more time. It's especially tricky because none of these, the 2, when I say this 2, it's not going to fall on any of these beats, and it's going to fall like in some odd place. You know how like writing 1/3 is an infinite decimal point? Well, I have to say the 2 on an infinite decimal point. It's unfortunate, but I'll try it again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That one was worse, so forgive me for that. I think this will be better to illustrate on Theoria. But as far as this math goes, am I making sense?
Yeah, that looks right, man.
Okay. Well, let's move over to Theoria. Let's try some of this, and we'll see how it goes. So we'll keep it like this, and let's try an exercise. I'm gonna crank the volume. It'll play the first one, and would you tell me how it sounds? Can you hear it? Could you hear it?
It kind of goes in and out a little bit.
Okay, let me see. Is my volume, if I change my volume. Better?
It was better. It's not perfect, but it's better.
Okay, you guys are a lot louder, so let's take it one at a time. Let's see how it goes. If you're having a hard time, we can adjust. First thing to notice, our time signature, 3/4. Okay, so we're gonna have 3 quarter notes per measure. So let's listen to just the first measure. So what's the first thing you hear? What's happening in that first beat?
You can play it one more time.
Yeah.
Sounds like a rest to me.
No, there's no rest in there. There's basically.
Maybe it starts with the eighth note.
Yeah, it starts with an eighth note because you can hear it's like it stops before the next click.
Oh yeah.
Okay, but what's the next note? Where does the next note end?
Sounds like a quarter note.
Yeah. See, it's ending like halfway into the next click. It's actually not a quarter note because it's not ending halfway through. Where's it actually ending?
On the beat.
Yeah, on the beat. So it's a what?
Quarter note dotted.
Yes, dotted quarter note. Okay, and then what's that last beat? What's happening there?
Sounds like it could be 2/8 notes.
Yes. Okay, now let's hear the last one. So listen to that first beat. What's happening there?
Gotta be an eighth note, right?
Yeah. Again, 2/8 notes. We have 2 in a row. Notice, first of all, that as soon as I put in another eighth note, I get this measure line here. Okay? It's only going to do that for me if I have a complete measure here. I can't go over the measure. It won't let me do that. So let's go back. Let's say I try to put a quarter note in there. It won't even let me. Okay? And then if I add another eighth note, there's no measure going in there. But as soon as I have this, it tells me that my measure is complete. Okay, so I can kind of know that I at least got a full measure in here. Okay, that's if you are going through this and you are doing the math and not just guessing, this can be a good indication that you are on the right track. It's not a guarantee that you're right, but it's an indication that you're doing well. Okay, so yeah. So let's hear that first beat of measure 2 again. So what's happening? Ba ba ba.
Is it 2/8 and then a quarter note, or is it I don't know.
Let's
What the third one is.
You got the 2 quarter notes, or the 2 eighth notes. Let's hear the next part. That last one's tricky.
Is it an eighth note dotted?
It's not. Okay. That's a triplet. At the very end, there's a triplet.
Oh, with a rest?
Yes, exactly. There's a triplet with a rest. It's a tricky one to hear. Listen to how the last thing sounds awkward. Do you hear how that like doesn't quite fit?
Mm-hmm.
You can hear the beat without a note.
Well, not only the beat without a note, but it's like the entire pattern seems to kind of fall outside of our even divisions entirely. Triplet. Triplet. Okay, I usually say triplet when I'm trying to do something. So far, beat is triplet, 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 triplet. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, so but what is the triplet? What is the value of that triplet? Is it quarter notes or is it eighth notes?
Eighth notes?
Yeah, because it's happening in the space of a single beat, but we're actually missing something in the middle now. What am I missing before the triplet?
Is that one a quarter note? Because I guess it's like standing alone.
Are you talking about the triplet or?
It before the triplet, like in between those 2/8.
Yes, it's a quarter note.
And then the triplet, is it supposed to be like 3/8 notes, but the middle one is rest?
Yes, that's exactly right. And let's make that a rest. Okay. So let's hear what the whole thing is supposed to be, and then let's hear what we came up with. Okay, and let's hear what we did. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes, we got it. Okay, so they're tricky to hear, and it's tricky to put the visualization of the math to what you're hearing, and really that just takes practice. We do a number of these, and the more you do it, the easier things will be to hear. So for me, I've done this for a long time, so when I hear a triplet, it's obvious to me that there's a triplet here. And that's just because I've heard so many triplets, I've played so many triplets, that I just know what they feel like. And there's a disconnect between talking about the math behind it and the ground level first person experience of the triplet. It's once you've heard enough of them, they'll be a lot clearer. Okay, let's try one more. Yeah, these are pretty difficult. All right, let's hear the first measure one more time. What's the first thing that happens?
Sounds like there's a rest.
There's a rest of what duration?
I think I want to say quarter note. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a quarter note rest. And what happens in the second beat?
Is that a eighth note triplet rest on the third?
That's exactly right. Great job. Do you hear how that beat, that second beat is cut in half? Or is cut into 3 different things, and there's just nothing on that last one? Triplet. Do you hear how I can say that triplet in between the second beat and before the third? Triplet.
Yeah, that actually makes that so much easier. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what happens on beat 3?
I want to say it's a triplet again, but it's a rest, eighth note rest, something along those lines. I don't know if the math adds up for that, but it sounds like that.
It would add up. I don't think that's it, though.
I only hear one eighth note.
Yeah, and is it
And
on the first half or the second half?
play it again. It's on the second half.
That's right. So we have an eighth note rest followed by an eighth note. Okay. Now, does this equal a full measure?
Yeah, it does.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a quarter note. This triplet adds up to a quarter note, and then these 2 eighth notes add up to a quarter note. So 3, 4. Perfect. In case I didn't make this perfectly clear, and I'm hearing that you guys are understanding this, but for the recording purposes, you do count the rests towards the total measure. Okay, and let's go to measure 2. Yeah, this one's interesting. So what happens in the first beat?
There's some sort of rest after the first beat.
Yeah, there's a rest in there.
Is it a triplet?
Yeah, it's a triplet. What kind of
So-
triplet? What do you
The
think?
rest in between the first 3?
Yeah.
In between the first 2?
Is it an eighth note triplet, quarter note triplet? What?
Eighth note triplet, I think.
Yeah, so you're saying eighth in a triplet, eighth note, rest, eighth note, right?
Yes.
Yes.
That's right. So what about the last one?
Is it a quarter note and 2 eighth notes?
No. Do you hear how each one is the same length?
Oh yeah.
So here's your hint. First, let's listen to the metronome. 3 things happen in the space of 2 metronome clicks, right? Do you hear that?
Is it 2 eighth notes with the second eighth note having a dot on it?
That's not right.
Is it 2 quarter notes?
No, because 3 things are happening.
Oh.
Let me say it out loud. 1, 2, 3. In the space of 2 metronome beats, there are 3 things. 1, 2, 3. And our
So
metronome is
it's
going 1, 2. So what's that?
Is
A
it a
triplet.
triplet with a eighth note rest, eighth note, or
No.
would it be 2 rests and then another after that?
You guys are close. You're moving in the right direction. It's 3. It's quarter note triplets. 1, 2, 3.
So do you only use the triplets for eighth notes and quarter notes when they're in groups of 3?
So it depends what you mean by that. Yes, you will always use them in a group of 3. You have to complete your triplets. But I mean, it depends on whether or not you want to count this as a group of 3 eighth notes. And there are some funny things you can do. Like I can do an eighth note triplet where the second 2, like I can put a quarter note in here. You're not going to see that in any of these exercises, but it can be done. You can do some weird things with them. Let's not worry about that too much right now. For our purposes, you will always see them as complete and even. Okay? But let's listen to that again. So our metronome, remember, is quarter notes. So we have 1, 2, 3. And the thing we're hearing is 1, 2, 3 in the space of 2 beats. And our beat's a quarter note. So we have 3 things happening in the space of 2 quarter notes. Okay, and that is our triplet. So 3 quarter notes in the space where 2 quarter notes usually would go. Okay? Is that clear? No? Anyone?
Yeah, that makes more sense. I had a question about what the I guess rest of the assignments were for this unit.
Yeah. Well, before we get there, let's listen to the whole thing one more time, and then
Okay.
let's listen to what we wrote. And then let's hear what we wrote. That doesn't sound right, does it? So we have something wrong here. Does anyone hear where it is?
I thought it might have been a rest or 2 in the second measure, or the second half, whatever.
The second half sounds right to me. The first half, there seems to be a problem in there.
Is it in the triplet? We have to swap the second and third note.
Yeah, it sounds like that could be right. I would have to go back and undo all of this. So let's just hit check answer. I know I'm going to get it wrong, but okay, so this wasn't even a triplet. And now that they show me, that sounds pretty obvious, doesn't it? So the important lesson to take home here is that even I'm getting some of these wrong, okay? And that's fine. And that's why I'm going to be curving these assignments pretty steeply, okay? So you'll make mistakes. It's okay. And this is a particularly difficult exercise. But do you see what I mean when I say this is a really effective way of taking the mathematical theory and seeing how it actually works?
So did you say for grading, the way you're going to do it is you're giving everyone basically a 50 for just trying it, and then you're taking half of what their score is?
No. So that's you're close. Basically, what I'm doing is 50% of the grade is doing it, and 50% is what you actually get. So let's say I got a 60 as my final score on the assignment. So like I submitted this as is, and let's just say this was 60 out of 100. So 50% of my grade, let's say it's out of 100 points, I would get 50 points for doing it, and then out of 60 I would get basically 30 more points for having gotten a 60, so that would equal an 80. It's very what you're saying, you're very close to it, but it's the math ends up a little more generous than that. We might be saying exactly the same thing in just different words.
Yeah, we were. I think I just worded it weirdly.
That,
I might also
see, that's what
weirdly.
that's what I had thought would be like if you got 50% for just doing it, and then had you earned a 60, you would get an 80. But I was under the impression on your Blackboard announcement, that same example, we said that would be worth a 90.
Which example?
Give me 1 sec. Let me pull it up on Blackboard.
Yeah, well, I've got Blackboard here. That's Wake Tech, sorry. Just for your own information, if you ever go for a master's degree, I don't highly recommend doing other degrees while you're doing that. It's a lot. But announcements, not assignments. What did I say here? This one? 60 will end up being an 80.
Okay, it is 80. Maybe I just read it wrong.
That's all right. Okay.
I guess for me personally, and like I'll just be honest, is like I was getting like, 90s and hundreds on the other homeworks, and then this one, like I'm really even struggling to get a 50 on it. And even if I get a 50 on the homework, that would mean I would only get a 75. And like on 3 assignments, I'm kind of concerned that's gonna like really just crush my grade.
Okay.
And if it's like that on a test, because the test is usually just reflective of what the homework was, I'm just kind of worried about it.
Right, the test is what the homework was. So yeah, I can understand that. Maybe I haven't actually gone in and put in the grades for this unit yet, so it could be that I just made up that curve on the fly, and I can change that curve. Okay, let's say this. I'll look at the grades that people are getting, and I will I will design the curve so that the average grade in the class is the same as the average grade from the first unit. Okay?
Okay.
Does that
Thank
seem
you.
fair? Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and if it turns out that after me doing that, it's still like not quite enough for you, you can talk to me. Okay. Usually, what I do if a student is not getting good grades, if they show up to something like this, or they send me emails, or they do a private WebEx, whatever. So long as they do something, we'll work it out. Okay, you don't need to worry about me tanking your grade for like one sort of thing. So long as you show some effort to kind of learn it, then you'll be fine. Okay. So I know this unit is particularly difficult. People usually struggle with it when we are doing in-class lessons on it. I mean, I just showed you here. I'm getting things wrong here. So if people are struggling when we have the face-to-face lectures, doing it online is even more difficult. So I don't want you to feel like you're going to be, like your grade's going to be tanked because of this. So it'll be okay.
I also wanted to ask too. I know that you said, I think it said that we could redo the assignment and turn in another grade as long as before the test.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, like, as the weeks go on, if in a week and a half from now I feel better about this, just because we've like been learning more material and you kind of develop that ear recognition, would we still have the opportunity later on to go back and grade replace or improve our grade that way?
Since you guys came to this review session, you can do it. But for students who didn't show up, I can't just let people turn in homework at whatever they want. But you guys are making the effort, so you get the leeway. Does that seem fair?
Yeah, man, it's
Yes.
appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want this to be a really stressful class for people. It's something I noticed a lot is like if people leave this class hating the material because I just made it too difficult, that really defeats the purpose of having taken this class, and I don't want that. So if you're putting in some effort here, I'm gonna work with you. We'll make sure that you get the grade that you not necessarily want, but the grade that you deserve for the work you did. Okay, I'll be generous there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Garrett or who else is in here? I'm not see the names anymore. Um, James, I believe it was. One of you was about to ask something, and I cut you off. What were you going to ask?
I don't think I had a question specifically.
Okay.
I remember somebody that was in. They had asked what were the units going to be after this. I guess essentially, like, what are we going to learn after dictation? Does the next unit build on dictation, or is it completely separate?
Fortunately, it's different. Okay, so we're kind of out of the weeds after this week. Okay, so let's pull up the syllabus here. The lovely syllabus I've copy and pasted for every time I've done this class. Okay, so harmony. We're going to be doing harmony and major scales, minor scales, key signatures, etc. And I've introduced the concept of harmony already in Unit 1. So this is actually building off of Unit 1. And then the next unit is building off of Unit 1 as well. So we're going back to like intervals and things like that. And so the stuff that's coming up is actually more about intervals and anything than rhythm. The thing is, this particular unit is really it's the most difficult, and it is the least like all the others. And that's a if you're gonna have one that's really difficult, it's good that it's the least like all the others. But the thing that's really interesting here is rhythm is actually more indicative of the music than the actual pitches. I can play the wrong pitches to a song with the right rhythm, and you will be able to tell what that song is. But if I play the right pitches in the wrong rhythm, you won't be able to tell what that song is anymore. So rhythm actually it's really interesting that it's more primal. Earlier, like in human history, that is, like the first sorts of music that we made were rhythmic, not melodic. And so it's much more early in our evolution of music that we came up with rhythm than melody. And it's so we can recognize music better by rhythm. But as far as the actual theory goes, rhythm is not easy. So that's a pretty interesting thing. But I'm going on a rant now. The following units from now until the very end of the semester will not be building on rhythm. Is that good news?
That's the best thing I've heard all day.
Good. Okay. And the same thing's going to apply with the test. For this unit, I'm going to look at the grades. I will make it so that the grades are not unlike they were on the first unit. Okay? Are there any other things you guys want to go over here?
I've got to hop off of here, but I appreciate your help.
Absolutely, happy to help. And feel free to redo your homework exercises, turn in new things, get some extra practice in there. I'll take whatever submissions you send to me from this point forward. And what else was I going to say? Yeah, if you find over the weekend before the test you have more questions, just send me an email. I'll work with you on that too. Okay?
Thank you.
Absolutely.